Pam Bondi used Fox News to send a threat to Jasmine Crockett, and Crockett just responded in a way that exposes the rot at the core of right-wing power. You need to hear this.
Thank the chairman. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I first just want to begin with the news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present, because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric, and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear, because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting attorney general go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information, and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook, because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him, because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cyber crime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm gonna walk in with the level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me, and that is what it looks like to serve. Thank you.
What Jasmine Crockett did in that moment wasn't just another Democratic clapback. It was a reminder of what real public service looks like when the political climate is polluted with manufactured outrage and weaponized misinformation. She walked into that hearing carrying the weight of something most Americans don't get to see, the reality that lawmakers today are forced to navigate not only legislation, but threats, intimidation, and a constant stream of bad faith attacks aimed at silencing them. So when she opened by pointing out the obvious, that Republicans are still obsessing over Joe Biden as if he's somehow still in office, it wasn't sarcasm for entertainment. It was a critique of a Congress that keeps choosing performative political theater over governing. Crockett wasn't just saying they're living in the past, she was exposing the deliberate strategy behind it. If they can keep repeating the same narratives long enough, they don't have to write laws, solve problems, or confront the crises happening right now. And that's exactly what she was challenging. But then she made a pivot, and this is where her message became so much bigger than the clip itself. She talked about the difference between litigators and legislators. That wasn't accidental. She was reminding the country that Republicans have turned Congress into a courtroom, not to pursue truth, but to stage spectacles. Instead of doing the job taxpayers sent them to do, they hold hearings designed not to solve problems, but to create headlines. And she called that out with clarity that cut through the noise. When she invoked Senator Booker's words about right versus wrong, she was elevating the conversation to something more universal, not left versus right, but the moral obligation of people in power to tell the truth, to protect institutions, and to stop poisoning the American public with rhetoric that leads to violence. And she wasn't speaking in hypotheticals. She pulled back the curtain on something lawmakers rarely admit publicly. Both she and the Republican chairman are receiving death threats at levels no one should ever experience. That wasn't political. That was human. That was a Democrat reminding the country that real lives are on the line when political discourse is debased by lies. Then came the part that shook people, her address to Pam Bondi. Crockett didn't raise her voice, she didn't attack personally, she simply held Bondi accountable, the way a democracy is supposed to function, for going on Fox News and using her platform as the nation's top law enforcement figure to target a sitting member of Congress. And Crockett understood exactly how dangerous that is, because when someone in Bondi's position frames constitutionally protected speech as wrongdoing, she's not just threatening one person, she's signaling to millions of viewers that dissent is illegitimate. That's how democratic erosion happens, one televised threat at a time. Crockett's criticism of Elon Musk wasn't random either. She used him as an example of the unequal application of the law that is tearing faith in institutions apart. She wasn't speaking about wealth, she was speaking about privilege, power, and how selectively enforced justice creates a two-tiered system. Musk becomes the symbol of what happens when a billionaire can obtain protections and resources everyday Americans never could. Her point wasn't personal, it was systemic. And in connecting Musk's conduct, Fox-driven propaganda, and the DOJ's intimidation tactics, she drew a line showing how these forces reinforce one another. By the time she told her story about becoming a public defender, walking in with no experience, but with the lived understanding necessary to serve clients others could not relate to, she wasn't bragging. She was showing the difference between someone who wants power and someone who wants to serve. That final story was the most subtle and important part of her message. Representation isn't a buzzword. It has a purpose. It builds trust, it builds understanding, and it builds a justice system worthy of the people it claims to protect. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just defending herself in that hearing. She was defending the idea of democracy itself, where power is accountable, voices aren't silenced, and the law is not a weapon used against political opponents. If you understand that, you understand exactly why Republicans fear her. If this kind of clarity matters to you, make sure you subscribe to The Blue Report, share this video, and help amplify these moments, because the louder we are, the harder it becomes for intimidation to win.